You want to force me into early retirement? Perfect. Because the second you sign that paper, this company will owe me $85 million before lunch break. The conference room went dead silent. Austin Bradford, our 35-year-old CEO, stopped mid-sentence. His HR director, Craig Hoffman, actually dropped his pen. Rachel Torres, the CFO who thought she knew everything about our finances, just stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I placed a cream-colored envelope on the polished table. The Westridge Bank watermark caught the morning light just right. "Before we proceed with this early retirement package," I said, keeping my voice level, "you might want to review this. My name is William Patterson. I'm 52 years old, and I've been the Senior Risk and Compliance Director at Hartwell Industries for the past 8 years. That Tuesday morning, I sat in conference room 12 watching these kids try to push me out the door. They had no idea they were about to trigger the most expensive mistake in company history. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. 3 years ago, during the Phoenix acquisition, I was drowning in merger documents. Hartwell was buying Phoenix Technologies for $8.2 billion, and as the compliance guy, I had to review every contract, every vendor relationship, every piece of paper that moved between the companies. That merger reminded me of coordinating supply lines in Afghanistan back in my Army days. Same principle: track every moving part, anticipate what could go wrong, prepare for the worst-case scenario. 20 years in the military teaches you that someone's always trying to game the system, and the guys at the top don't always have your back when things go sideways. The merger included enhanced whistleblower protections, standard corporate theater these days. But buried in the legal paperwork was something more interesting: a new long-term incentive plan with what they called an integrity escalation pool. Basically, $85 million set aside to reward employees who identified major compliance risks. Now, I'd seen enough corporate politics to know how this dance goes. Young executives get ambitious, start cutting corners to hit their numbers. When someone like me points it out, they find creative ways to make that person disappear. I'd watched it happen to good people, guys with families, mortgages, kids heading to college. Speaking of which, that's part of why this mattered so much to me. My granddaughter Emma was 14 then, living with me since my daughter died in that car accident 8 years back. Smart kid, straight A's, already talking about pre-med at Stanford. College costs were hitting $80,000 a year for good schools, and my government pension plus Hartwell salary weren't going to cover that kind of money. So when I saw that integrity pool sitting there, I got creative with my contract renewal. The legal department was completely swamped with merger work, mountains of paperwork moving between offices, everyone working 16-hour days. The previous CEO was 6 months from retirement and basically signing everything put in front of him without reading it. Perfect conditions for slipping in some protective language. In the Army, we called it defensive positioning. You dig your foxhole before you need it, not after the shooting starts. I called my addition an integrity performance and change trigger clause. Boring name, right? That was intentional. If I filed a formal compliance warning about financial irregularities exceeding $25 million, and the company responded with any adverse employment action within 45 days, I'd receive the entire integrity pool as compensation. Here's the brilliant part. I didn't just put it in my employment contract. I structured it as a side agreement requiring only CEO and board compensation committee approval. No full board review needed. Then I set up an escrow arrangement with Westridge Bank, the same institution handling our M&A custody services. Once triggered, they'd release the funds automatically from the designated reserve accounts. No takebacks, no additional approvals required. The old CEO signed it without even reading past the first paragraph. Why would he care? He was sailing off into a $12 million golden parachute retirement. The compensation committee approved it along with 30 other routine paperwork items in a batch vote. Legal stamped it approved as standard post-merger employee protection language. For 3 years, I was the perfect employee. Stellar performance reviews, company awards, even won the President's Excellence Award for contract optimization, all while sitting on an $85 million insurance policy against corporate retaliation. Then Austin Bradford took over as CEO. Austin's father had been chairman of the board for 20 years before retiring. Junior grew up thinking Hartwell Industries was his family inheritance. At 35, he had an MBA from Wharton, 0 real-world experience, and absolutely no patience for what he called legacy processes. which basically meant anyone over 45 who remembered how things used to work around here. The writing was on the wall the day he brought in his own leadership team. Rachel Torres as CFO, 29 years old, aggressive as hell, treated the finance department like her personal kingdom. Craig Hoffman as HR director, some consultant who specialized in organizational optimization, which is corporate speak for getting rid of people you don't like. Emma could see I was worried about my job security. She was 17 now, junior year of high school, already stressed about college applications. "Grandpa, what happens if they fire you?" she asked one evening while we were reviewing her SAT prep materials. "They won't fire me, sweetheart. I'm too valuable," I told her, but honestly I wasn't sure anymore. "But what if they do? How will I afford college?" That conversation kept me up that night. This kid had already lost her mother. She wasn't going to lose her future because some entitled brat wanted to clean house. About 20 months ago, I started noticing some irregular vendor payments while doing my quarterly compliance review. Nothing huge at first, just a consulting company called Phoenix Capital Solutions getting monthly payments of $600,000 for strategic advisory services. Phoenix Capital Solutions. Same name as the company we'd acquired, but this was a different entity entirely. Red flag number 1. I pulled the vendor file on Phoenix Capital Solutions, incorporated in Nevada 18 months earlier. No website, no industry certifications, no track record of any kind. The address was a UPS store in Las Vegas. When you've spent 12 years in military procurement, you develop a nose for shell companies and ghost contractors. Every payment authorization had Rachel's digital signature, not her deputies, not rotating through other executives like normal approval chains. Always Rachel, always within 6 hours of invoice submission. In the Army, we called that kind of pattern single point of failure. Usually meant someone was running their own side operation. I dug deeper into the Nevada Secretary of State filings. Phoenix Capital's registered agent was Torres Family Holdings LLC, the same LLC that appeared in Rachel's executive disclosure forms as her personal investment vehicle. Our CFO was paying herself $600,000 a month through a shell company. I went back through 18 months of payment records, $10.8 million total. But Rachel was smart about it. She'd split the payments across different cost centers: facilities maintenance, IT consulting, emergency repairs, strategic planning. No single department would see the full picture unless someone was specifically looking for it. Then I found the real smoking gun. I cross-referenced our actual facility records with the Phoenix Capital invoices. They were billing us for HVAC upgrades that never happened, server maintenance on equipment we didn't own, security system repairs at facilities that didn't exist. The invoices were complete fiction. But that wasn't even the biggest problem. The more I dug, the more I found. Austin had his own setup, Bradford Strategic Consulting, incorporated in Delaware, billing us $400,000 monthly for executive advisory services. I checked our board meeting minutes. No mention of any external strategic consulting contract. The payments were being coded as management development expenses and buried in the training budget. Craig's operation was more sophisticated. Hoffman Solutions LLC, pulling $350,000 monthly for HR optimization consulting. At least his invoices referenced actual HR projects, but when I checked with the department heads, none of them had ever heard of Hoffman Solutions or requested any outside consulting. Over 18 months, I was looking at a total of $23.4 million in fraudulent payments. Austin's take, $7.2 million. Rachel's, $10.8 million. Craig's, $6.3 million. The pattern was always the same. Invoices submitted on the 15th of each month, payments authorized within hours, money flowing to LLCs connected to their personal holdings. I spent weeks building the case, working nights and weekends while Emma was at school. My military training and intelligence analysis came in handy. Create the timeline, map the connections, document everything twice. In combat, incomplete intel gets people killed. In corporate warfare, incomplete documentation gets you fired and sued. "You're working too much, Grandpa," Emma said one Saturday morning, finding me at the kitchen table with spreadsheets and bank records scattered everywhere. "Just a work project, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." She picked up one of the Phoenix Capital invoices. "This company charged us $50,000 for cooling system maintenance. That's like Most people's salary. Smart kid, too smart sometimes. What would happen if people were stealing from your company? She asked. They'd go to jail, and the company would fire anyone who helped them. What about people who reported them? I looked at my granddaughter, 17 years old, looking more like her mother every day, asking questions that showed she understood exactly what was at stake here. The good companies protect whistleblowers. The bad companies try to destroy them. Which kind is yours? That was the million-dollar question. Or, in this case, the $85 million question. I put together a comprehensive 47-page report. Flowcharts showing money moving from Hartwell to the shell companies to personal accounts. Email threads where they discussed coding strategies to avoid detection. Bank records proving the facility's work they'd billed us for never happened. Even found the Delaware and Nevada corporate filings connecting everything back to their personal LLCs. The smoking gun was an email thread I recovered from the IT backup servers. Austin, Rachel, and Craig discussing how to optimize vendor relationships for maximum efficiency. Corporate speak for, let's steal as much as we can without getting caught. On a Monday morning in September, I filed a formal code red integrity warning with the Internal Audit Committee. Following company protocol, I copied the board audit chair and sent notifications to legal and HR. The response was faster than I expected. By noon that day, my access to the procurement system was temporarily restricted for system maintenance. By 3 p.m., I was excluded from the weekly executive leadership meeting due to agenda changes. By close of business, half my team was reassigned to support critical initiatives in other departments. Tuesday brought more surgical strikes. My corporate parking spot was reallocated to optimize space utilization. My company credit card was flagged for routine security review despite having 0 charges on it. My email access had technical issues that somehow only affected messages to board members and audit committee members. The pattern was textbook retaliation. Isolate the target, remove their resources, make them look incompetent. I'd seen it happen to good soldiers who reported corruption up the chain of command. The only difference was that in the Army, we called it fragging. In corporate America, they called it performance management. Wednesday morning, Austin called me into his corner office. The kid was sitting behind a desk that cost more than most people's cars, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Emma's entire college application budget. Bill, you're playing a dangerous game, he said, not bothering with small talk. I'm following compliance protocols, I replied. You're exceeding your authority. Vendor management isn't your domain. Contract compliance is exactly my domain, and $23 million in suspicious payments requires investigation. His smile reminded me of every entitled officer I'd ever served under, guys who got their bars through family connections instead of earning them in the field. You know what happens to employees who don't understand their place in the ecosystem? They fulfill their fiduciary duties. They find themselves exploring new career opportunities elsewhere. The threat was clear enough, but Austin Bradford had no idea who he was threatening. I'd survived IED attacks in Afghanistan. I'd managed supply chains under enemy fire. Some prep school brat in an expensive suit didn't scare me. What scared me was the thought of Emma's college dreams getting destroyed because I couldn't protect myself from corporate retaliation. That's when I realized my insurance policy was about to pay off in ways I'd never imagined. Thursday brought the performance coaching session from hell. Craig Hoffman's office smelled like expensive cologne and corporate bullshit. He had a manila folder thick with what I assumed were fabricated incidents, sitting on his desk like a loaded weapon. We're concerned about your collaborative approach, Bill, he said, sliding the folder toward me. Several colleagues have expressed concerns about your intensity. My last performance review had been exceeds expectations across the board, but suddenly I had cultural alignment issues and communication challenges. The timing wasn't exactly subtle. This seems premature, I said, not touching his performance improvement plan. My quarterly review was spotless. Recent observations suggest you might benefit from our career transition program. Career transition program. In the military, we called that getting chaptered out. In corporate America, they called it voluntary separation. Same result. You're gone, and it looks like your choice. Sign here to acknowledge receipt, Craig said, pointing to a signature line. I signed. Then I photographed every page with my phone while he pretended to answer emails. Old habits from documenting equipment transfers in the field. Always create your own paper trail. The next 2 weeks were textbook corporate psychological warfare. Meeting invites arriving 30 minutes before start time for rooms, on the opposite side of campus. Critical emails sent at 4:59 p.m. Friday, requiring Monday morning responses. My projects were reassigned without notice. Then I'd get questioned about missing deadlines for work I no longer owned. They were building a case file against me, documenting every manufactured failure. What they didn't realize was that I was simultaneously building mine against them. I played the perfect victim, confused but trying hard, sending earnest emails asking for clarification that never came, CCing my personal attorney on every exchange, creating an evidence trail that would make a federal prosecutor smile. Emma could see the stress was getting to me. She found me in the garage one Saturday night, organizing my evidence files for the 100th time. "They're really trying to fire you, aren't they?" she said. No point lying to her. "Yeah, they are." "Because you caught them stealing?" "Because I reported them stealing. There's a difference." She sat down on my workbench, looking older than her 17 years. "What happens to my college plans if you lose your job?" That question hit harder than any corporate threat. "You'll still go to college, sweetheart, I promise you that." "How?" "Stanford costs like $85,000 a year now. Community college isn't going to get me into med school." I looked at my granddaughter, smart, determined, carrying her mother's dreams along with her own. She deserved better than watching her future get destroyed by corporate politics. "Trust me on this one, Emma. I've got a plan." Meanwhile, Austin was tightening the screws at work. My signature authority was reduced from $5 million to $50,000. "Temporary adjustment while we realign responsibilities," he explained in an email that fooled nobody. My team was instructed to route all decisions through Rachel, just ensuring proper oversight during the transition period. "What transition?" I asked during our next one-on-one meeting. Austin's smile told me everything I needed to know. Then came the master stroke. They revised the organizational chart, effective immediately. My position still existed, but now it reported to Casey Morrison, a 28-year-old they'd hired 6 months earlier straight out of business school. The humiliation was intentional. Report to someone young enough to be my daughter, or resign in shame. That's when I made my move. I filed formal notice of integrity escalation with Westridge Bank. Not the informal warning I'd sent to the audit committee weeks earlier. This was the legal notification outlined in my contract clause, sent via certified mail to the board secretary, the escrow agent, and my attorney. The language was specific, anticipating imminent adverse employment action following unresolved Code Red integrity escalation regarding $23.4 million in fraudulent vendor payments, requesting preparation for release of escrow funds per original agreement terms. The clock officially started ticking. Austin must have gotten wind of something because suddenly the shell companies started shutting down. Phoenix Capital submitted a final invoice and announced they were concluding operations due to strategic refocusing. Bradford Strategic Consulting sent notice they were transitioning to new market opportunities. Hoffman Solutions was pursuing alternative client relationships. Classic damage control. Extract the money and burn the evidence. Austin tried one last direct approach. He called me into his office for what he probably thought would be a negotiation. "Bill, you need to drop this audit committee complaint," he said, dispensing with any pretense of politeness. "The vendor matters have been resolved, the companies are gone. No harm, no foul." $23 million in fraudulent payments isn't no harm, Austin. Alleged payments to properly authorized vendors following established procedures. Your procedures for stealing company money? His face went red. "I'm conducting an internal review. Your escalation is premature and disruptive. Withdraw it, and we can discuss your future here." "What future? The early retirement package Craig's preparing?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me like a chess player contemplating a sacrifice. "Companies need team players, not crusaders. But we're not unreasonable. 8 months salary, full benefits, excellent recommendation letter. All you have to do is withdraw your complaint and sign a standard separation agreement. Standard meaning an NDA that would bury everything I'd discovered." "I'll need to review any proposal carefully," I said. "You'll have it Monday. Take the weekend to think about your options. Consider what's best for everyone." What Austin didn't know was that I'd already considered every option, and in 72 hours, his Monday morning was going to arrive with an $85 million invoice attached. I spent that weekend with Emma, helping her finish her Stanford application essay. She was writing about overcoming adversity, about losing her mother but finding strength in family support. "I hope I get in," she said, reviewing her personal statement for the 10th time. "You will, and we'll find a way to pay for it." "Even if you lose your job?" I smiled, thinking about the Westridge Bank letter sitting in my home safe. "Especially then." Monday morning arrived with all the ceremony of an execution. The early retirement package came with a cover letter from Craig expressing regret about organizational changes requiring difficult decisions, 6 months base salary, continuation of benefits, and a glowing recommendation letter. The NDA ran 12 pages of aggressive silence. "I understand this is difficult," Craig said when I met with him to review the package, "but sometimes a fresh start is best for everyone." I let my shoulders slump, played the defeated veteran. "Can I have a few days to review this with my attorney?" "Of course. But Bill," his voice sharpened, "the offer expires Friday at 5 p.m. After that, we proceed with termination for cause." Perfect. They just provided the final piece of evidence I needed. Termination threat following integrity escalation, exactly as specified in my contract clause. Friday morning, I dressed for battle. My best suit, the one I'd bought after closing the Meridian contract 3 years ago. I sent one final email to Austin, CCing HR. "Ready to discuss transition package. Can we meet at 10 a.m.? His response was immediate. "Conference room 12, we'll have everything ready." He thought he was closing the trap. He had no idea he was walking into mine. At 9:58 a.m., I sent a secured package to the Securities and Exchange Commission. 47 pages of evidence, fraudulent invoices, shell company documentation, the Nevada and Delaware corporate filings linking personal holdings to company vendors, a complete roadmap to $23.4 million in stolen funds. At 9:59 a.m., I stood outside conference room 12, looking through the glass at Austin's smug face, Craig's fake concern, Rachel's entitled arrogance. At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into my $85 million moment. The conference room setup was pure corporate theater. Austin at the head of the table, fingers steepled in victory. Craig had his termination folder spread open with signature flags sticking out like yellow teeth. Rachel lounged with the casual confidence of someone who'd stolen $10.8 million and considered it a successful quarter. "Bill," Austin began, voice dripping with manufactured sympathy, "we've tried to make this work, but your continued disruption of normal business operations—" "You mean my integrity escalation regarding $23.4 million in fraudulent vendor payments?" Rachel's jaw tightened. "Alleged irregularities. And those matters have been reviewed internally. By the people who stole the money. How thorough." Craig jumped in, sliding the retirement package across the table. "We're offering you a final opportunity. Accept the early retirement package with full benefits, or we proceed with termination for cause." I didn't touch the paper. Instead, I pulled out my phone and placed it face up on the conference table. "Before we continue, there's something you need to understand. 48 hours ago, I notified Westridge Bank that adverse employment action was imminent following my unresolved code red escalation." The room went quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. "What are you talking about?" Craig's pen stopped moving. "The integrity performance and change trigger clause in my employment contract. Surely legal reviewed it when you were planning my termination." His blank stare was answer enough. I pulled out the cream-colored envelope with the Westridge Bank seal. 3 years ago, during the Phoenix acquisition, I negotiated specific whistleblower protection. If I report executive malfeasance exceeding $25 million and face retirement or termination within 45 days before the issue is properly resolved, I receive $85 million from the Merger Reserve Fund. "That's impossible," Austin sputtered, his confidence evaporating. "Page 7, Section 4, signed by your father's predecessor, approved by the Board Compensation Committee, funded through escrow instructions with Westridge Bank." I dialed Westridge on speakerphone. 2 rings. "Westridge Trust Services Fiduciary Department. This is Margaret Walsh." "Ms. Walsh, this is William Patterson, account verification AE834. I need immediate confirmation of trigger status on the Hartwell Industries integrity clause." "Good morning, Mr. Patterson. I show your anticipatory notice was received 48 hours ago. Can you confirm the adverse employment action has occurred?" I looked directly at the retirement package. "I'm being offered forced early retirement as retaliation for reporting $23.4 million in fraudulent vendor payments. The alternative is termination for cause. Is this in response to your Code Red integrity escalation filed September 15th regarding executive vendor fraud? Correct. The underlying issues remain unresolved, and the company is now attempting to terminate my employment. Keys clicked in the background. Please hold while I verify trigger conditions have been met. The room erupted. Rachel slammed her palm on the table. Hang up the phone now. That won't stop the escrow release, I said calmly. The instructions are irrevocable once triggered. Austin was frantically typing on his laptop. I need to see this contract. This has to be void or superseded or... Mr. Patterson, Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. I've confirmed all trigger conditions are satisfied under Section 7.3 of your agreement. Adverse employment action following unresolved integrity escalation qualifies as constructive termination. The $85 million disbursement will process within 1 business day. This is Austin Bradford, CEO. Austin barked at the phone. Cancel that payment immediately. No funds move without my authorization. I'm sorry, sir, but these are irrevocable escrow instructions executed 3 years ago. The funds are held in a segregated account outside company control. Once triggered, current management has no authority to stop the transfer. I pulled out a second folder, placing it next to the first. While we're all here, I should mention that complete documentation of the vendor fraud has been submitted to the SEC. Phoenix Capital Solutions, Bradford Strategic Consulting, Hoffman Solutions LLC, all connected to your personal holdings, $23.4 million in fraudulent payments over 18 months. Rachel's face went from flushed to ash gray. Additionally, I continued, my attorneys have maintained complete backups of all relevant documents under litigation hold. Every email, every invoice, every bank transfer. Oh, and Austin, your 3 a.m. document shredding session was recorded by building security cameras. Destroying evidence is a federal crime. Austin stood so fast his chair toppled backward. You can't do this. I didn't do anything, you did. Every retaliatory action, every vindictive move, every attempt to silence a whistleblower. You built this case yourselves. I just documented it. My phone buzzed. Text message from Margaret Walsh. Disbursement initiated, expected completion Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern. I stood, smoothing my jacket. You have 72 hours to explain to the board and shareholders why their former compliance director now owns $85 million of company money. I suspect they'll have questions. As I reached the door, Craig's voice cracked. Wait, we can negotiate. Work something out. I turned back. The time for negotiation was when I reported $23.4 million in fraud through proper channels. You chose retaliation instead. Enjoy explaining that choice to federal investigators. The last thing I saw before the door closed was Austin frantically calling legal, Rachel staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else, and Craig looking at his termination folder like it had turned into a snake, which, in an $85 million way, it had. The counterattack came within hours, desperate and sloppy as a cornered animal's last stand, but by then, it was too late. Westridge Bank confirmed the transfer Monday morning. $85 million. 8 digits that transformed 3 years of planning into permanent financial security. Austin, Rachel, and Craig were terminated by the board that same week. The FBI arrested all 3 the following Tuesday on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, and tax evasion. The board offered me a consulting contract to help clean up the mess. $1,500 per hour, reporting directly to them, not management. We recovered $18.7 million from frozen accounts and helped federal prosecutors build cases against 6 other executives involved in similar schemes. That evening, I called Emma at her friend's house. Grandpa, how did the meeting go? Pretty well, sweetheart. Stanford's not going to be a problem anymore. What do you mean? I mean you can apply wherever you want. Money's not an issue. There was silence on the other end. Then, did you win? Yeah, Emma. We won. 6 months later, she got her acceptance letter from Stanford. Full tuition, room and board, medical school track. When she asked how we were paying for it, I just smiled. Sometimes the best insurance policies are the ones people forget they sold you. The beautiful irony? I used their own merger funds to secure my granddaughter's future. They'd paid for the rope I eventually used to hang them with. Sometimes being the oldest guy in the room means you're also the smartest. And sometimes the best revenge is living well with $85 million of your enemy's money. Money you earned by being exactly who they tried to punish you for being.